Welcome to Speed Talk Live, which isn't really live, but a poorly produced podcast where we talk about NASCAR and all things racing. And occasionally we have a special guest or two, when we can get them to show up. Sit down, strap in, pull those belts tight. Speed Talk Live is on the air.
Pace car is in. Green flag, green flag, green flag.
Welcome everybody, another week. Welcome back to Speed Talk Live. I'm Greg Engel. You're going to notice something a little different today, and that is I'm not going to bring in Owen Johnson. Why? Well, let me tell you, our world traveler, he is normally based in England where he goes to law school. He flew back to the States this week and immediately flew to Peru. I don't know what he's doing down in Peru, but hey, so he's down there this week. He did record some stuff for us. We're going to bring that in later. We're also going to talk about, obviously, Gateway. We're going to talk about Portland a little bit. Some interesting strategy from Penske, Team Penske at Gateway. Actually set up Cindric for the win there. We'll talk about that. Larson finally got his waiver. Finally. Can you believe it? Also, I got a chance to spend some time with a good friend of mine, Carl Edwards. He came out of the shadows last week. We talked to him. A lot more going on, so let's get started. So we had Gateway this week, Worldwide Technology Raceway, which I don't call it Worldwide Technology Raceway because they don't pay me to call it Worldwide Technology Raceway, so I call it Gateway. It was a good race. As races go, the only exciting part was early in the race, and I'm talking about up until the last 30 laps. It was a good race. Christopher Bell was dominating. He swept both the stages. The only exciting thing that happened was Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson tangling. I think it was just before stage 2. I forget the lap number. Knocked Kyle Busch out of the race. I thought maybe we were going to have another fisticuffs. That didn't happen. Little inside information there. A long time ago, I asked Kyle Larson about fighting, and he said he doesn't like to fight. He doesn't like to get into confrontations because he's too small. And I'm not disagreeing with that. He's not a big guy. So that was the part of that the part of the early part of the race that we looked at. But Bell was dominant. He led the most laps. Like I said, swept both stages. But Team Penske made a strategic move late in the race. They'd stayed out at the end of stage 2. They had their 3 cars lined up, Blaney, Cindric, Logano. And towards the end, all of a sudden it became a duel between Christopher Bell, who clearly had the fastest car, trying to catch Ryan Blaney. And let me tell you, that was some of the best racing all year, was seeing Bell sneak up, get underneath, not be able to complete the pass for a good 30 laps. Coming to about 10 laps to go, Bell suddenly reported engine issues, possible engine issues, said game over, and had to slow. He kind of dropped back. Martin Truex Jr., who had a flat tire earlier in the race and was 2 laps down, was pushing Bell, which there's no rules against that unless it's the white flag lap. There's no rules against that. So we saw that, and he was keeping Bell up, up and inside the top 10. That was cool to see, but it looked like Ryan Blaney was going to go on to win his first race since Martinsville last October. Obviously, that's what got him into the Final Four, and he went on to win the championship from there. So it looked like he was going to cruise to victory, but as he took the white flag, ran out of fuel, slowed, Austin Cindric rockets by, scores his first win since the Daytona 500 in 2022. It was a great win. Austin Cindric's a nice guy, so it was a very popular win. It's happy to see him win, if not Blaney. But going back to the Penske lineup at the end of stage 3, it turns out that was something that had kind of been planned. And Brian Wilson, the winning crew chief, talked about that after the race.
Yeah, a lot of that conversation starts during the week. We've got a great team of engineers that do a lot of research on what's worked and what has not worked. We have a meeting on Wednesday where we all sit there and review the history And then we also have a meeting in the morning where all the crew chiefs get together and we talk about, well, now that we've seen the tire fall off from practice and we know what the history was plus what we expect, it gives us an opportunity to talk about what do we think we're going to do throughout the day. We oftentimes will challenge each other and bounce ideas back and forth, but oftentimes we do come to the same answer like you saw today.
So, little team strategy going on there. They compare notes, they talk to each other. And of course, they're still racing against each other. So there comes a certain point when they're just going to give all that up and go back to, just trying to win for themselves, which is what they did. But I thought it was kind of interesting that Penske had been kind of, I don't want to say conspiring. Okay, I'll say it, conspiring to set themselves up for that and give Penske their first win of the season. And that win went to Austin Cindric. It's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out with Cindric now in the championship hunt. But I also got a chance to spend some time with Austin Cindric later in the week, and I asked him if he was aware of that strategy or if he just kind of played it by ear and whatever his crew chief said. Congratulations on the win. Really cool. Really popular win. Brian Wilson seemed to indicate Sunday night, and Brian Wilson, no relation to the Beach Boys, was talking about how the crew chiefs get together during the week and kind of plan and strategize the upcoming race. And Sunday, you guys stayed out when everybody else pitted, and it put you guys, in the top three. Did you know about that strategy coming into this, or do you just kind of do whatever he says?
At the end of the day, I do whatever he says. I mean, I feel like we have a good enough relationship that if I have input, I'll give it. But otherwise, he's the one that's dealing with all the information as far as seeing it all in real time as it's happening. And I feel like a turning point in that race was some of those cars staying out on those really old tires, being able to still make somewhat competitive lap time, or at least make it hard for guys with 4 tires to go by. And I really feel like that, somewhat diverted some of our strategy to maybe something more aggressive as to what we did. Obviously, we only stopped a handful of times in the race. So, and we had good enough cars to do so either. I didn't have a whole lot of fall off or a whole lot of balance migration throughout the run. So the car was super predictable and just opens up a lot of windows. And I felt like we had a top 3 car, and I felt like our strategy was top tier as well.
You get into this routine, speaking of meetings, and you come in every week and, okay, let's analyze the last race. What's the feeling like coming into these meetings for this week as the latest winner?
It's no different. I feel like this week's unique because Sonoma's got to repave and there's a lot of unknowns with that. So it's how do you gather as much information and as much data? How relevant is the information and the data that you have on Sonoma towards what you're doing, and then how do you utilize the 50-minute practice session in an efficient way? So very much and when it comes to the process in the relation to winning the race, I think it makes our gateway debrief somewhat shorter than maybe a more difficult race as far as like, hey, what do I want for next time? We had a super competitive car and kind of just looking for small knobs to make that even better and kind of go over why things went well, versus, last year, previous events, other cars in the field, definitely make good notes, because you want to be able to come back there and do that all again as a team. But as far as the process itself, winning and running that well, it's a validation of the process that we've put together as a team. If we're able to put, a fast car on the racetrack, make the right decisions in the race car, that is enough for us to be at the top level on a good day.
Well, here's hoping that you have many more short meetings this season, my friend. Congratulations. Enjoy it. Have fun this weekend at Sonoma.
Appreciate it.
So Cindric, also, like we said, like I asked him, his meetings are totally different now. It was a lot shorter meeting. So it was great to see. And then, like I said, Owen, before he left for Peru, which that's great. I wish I was in Peru. Maybe he'll bring me back one of those cool blankets or whatever they call it. Anyway, he recorded his thoughts on Gateway.
Hi, Greg. We're a little less live this week since I'll be in Peru by the time this goes out, but there's plenty to talk about after Gateway, so let's get started. I thought Gateway put on a race that looked a lot like Dover. Both have the intermediate package, and I felt it raced similarly. Lots of grooves in the track, letting drivers take different lines and get side by side consistently, but they were also able to make passes, unlike some of the past races we've seen at this track. Clean air was king as usual, but that led to some strategy calls. Penske was able to stay out, take one less pit stop than the rest of the field, and that gave them the track position they needed in the final stage, and obviously it worked out, with 2 Penske cars leading at the white flag and Cindric able to take the win. Obviously, this one ended up unsatisfactorily, but we had a great battle for the lead as well, just like we had at Dover, with one faster car able to get up to the leader, but not able to just fly right around. In this case, Blaney ran out of fuel, Christopher Bell suffered overheating issues that forced him to back off. So there was no great battle right to the checkered flag that we've seen, but it was still a good battle with one faster car not able to take the lead immediately. And I prefer that. I'd honestly rather see a faster car caught up with some aero blocking, a bit of a battle with the existing leader, rather than just driving by and the win being a foregone conclusion. But of course, it was Austin Cindric who was in position to get the win when Blaney ran out of fuel. My driver to watch for the weekend, I've got to give that plug there, even if I picked the wrong Penske driver to actually get the win. I think it's a really important sort of degree of legitimacy for Cindric. He won the Daytona 500, obviously, in his debut season, and he's won an Xfinity Series championship in the past, but now he's finally won a non-superspeedway cup race. Sure, he took advantage of Blaney running out of fuel, but winning means being in the right place at the right time. He was consistently running up front at Gateway, very strong car, very strong driver. Cindric has a reputation in the Cup Garage for being one of the most hardworking drivers, putting time in the simulator, working on the track, working with his team at the shop, and I'm happy to see all that work pay off. He's really struggled to get a win, but I really don't think that's his fault. Obviously, he has been the third Penske car for a lot of it, but he is a rookie, and Penske has really struggled. Sure, they're the 2-time champion. They've won every championship with the next-gen car, but that just means they've done really well in the playoff format. That doesn't necessarily mean they've been strong. I look at Joey Logano, for instance, who won only once last season and still hasn't won since then, has not won yet this season. In fact, coming into Gateway, he was outside of the playoff picture. So Penske has really struggled to get a hand with the new next-gen car, their next-gen Mustangs. And I think Cindric has not benefited from that. But I'm happy to see when that whole team is running up front, Cindric is also up there. One thing to highlight this weekend is talking about Penske being good at the playoff tracks. This track is a lot like Phoenix. So it's a really good indication of who might be fast in the championship race. And Penske, as we know, is fast at Phoenix because they got both of those 2 championships the past couple of years. They were also fast at Gateway. I think that tracks with every one of their cars. But the fastest driver was Christopher Bell. Obviously, he didn't end up getting a good finish to show for it with the overheating, but he was able to drive right up to Blaney and contend for the lead. He made it to the championship 4 last season, talking about parallels to Phoenix, and also had a mechanical issue, in that case, brake failure that sent him into the wall, causing terminal damage, taking him out of the race. But I think Christopher Bell could be a strong contender, certainly once it next season, or this season, if he can get redemption for crashing into the wall and getting out at Phoenix last year in the championship 4. Now, as a sidebar, he got his teammate Truex to push him in the last couple laps at Gateway, which he said he credited Truex for preserving a top 10 finish for that number 20 car. And perhaps the Joe Gibbs Racing team has some really good teamwork going, which could be valuable in the playoffs. I don't know how much pushing we'll see when it comes to it, but maybe if Truex is not in the championship 4 and Bell is, any advantage helps. A few drivers, just to highlight, had a really good performance at Gateway. Carson Hocevar finished 8th and ran up front in the number 77 Spire car, a really strong performance at the track he made his debut in, a really impressive debut in last year, subbing for Corey LaJoie while LaJoie was driving the number 9 for Chase Elliott. Justin Haley also finished 9th, just the second top 10 in a Rick Ware Racing car on a non-super speedway track, both of which he's delivered this season. Just a few races ago, he got that first one. He's really performing well in that car. So a lot more parity throughout the field, I felt. Some good drivers in perhaps traditionally backmarker equipment.
The other highlight of the weekend to me was the Xfinity race in Portland. Shane Van Giesenberg, SVG, won that. So now he's got a Cup win and an Xfinity win. And all he's got to do now is get an Xfinity win on an oval, which will kind of complete the cycle for him. And I think he could be a very true contender in the Xfinity Series for the Xfinity Series title this year, as he is running full time. So that would be great to see him do that. So let's move on. Kyle Larson finally got his waiver. NASCAR finally came out and said Tuesday that they were granting his waiver. he was one of, obviously, he was trying to do the double, and I'm not going to backfill you and all that. You should know it by now. The rains came at Indy and delayed the race. Then the rains came at Charlotte and stopped the race, and he wasn't able to get that. The conspiracy theories were flying. Why isn't NASCAR approving it? What's taking them so long? To their credit, NASCAR made available NASCAR Senior Vice President of Competition, Elton Sawyer, available to the media right as the announcement came out. So we were talking, and he said there was a lot of things going on, a lot of things behind the scenes. There's nothing, diabolical, nothing like that, and no conspiracy theories. Oh, we didn't want him to run or whatever. It just was something that was unprecedented, and I didn't really understand that at first because they've given waivers before. But it's like he mentioned, this is the first case of really someone going to race in another series and then coming back to race in NASCAR for championship, and they just had to make sure they were all on the same sheet. That's why it took so long. But I also ask Elton Sawyer if all the noise from the fans and all the noise from all of us, to be honest, really how they tuned that out. Elton, thanks for jumping on with us. I know it's hard to jump in this pool. As the decision, the longer it took to make this decision, the more noise was coming out. And yes, the fans pay our bills, but man, these guys make a lot of noise. There was conspiracy theories and all the reasons that we were waiting for this. How hard was it to tune out that noise? And I'll have a quick follow-up.
It wasn't really difficult, Greg, to be honest with you. I mean, I commend, John Probst and his leadership here at the R&D Center, and we stayed the course. We had our internal meetings. We have more internal meetings. We continue to have dialogue around it. And then the other part of it is we're in front of us was a race at Worldwide Technology Raceway that we're all getting prepared for. So, but again, the number one thing was to get to the right decision, take the time. It felt like the time that it took was the right amount of time to get to the right decision.
And just to confirm, you're not going to change the rules about these waivers, but it's still going to be sort of a case-by-case basis. I mean, injuries are going to be almost no-brainers. But when you have something come up like this, it's going to be more of like a case-by-case basis.
Well, what I would say, Greg, is that we're going to look at it, take a deeper dive. But as we sit here today, we feel like we have, language in the rule book that would support, obviously, giving the waiver and B, not giving the waiver. So it's in the rule book. If there's something we feel like and what we've learned from this process that we need to, add some language or delete some language, we'll do that. But as we sit here today, that's we don't feel like we need to do anything at the moment. But again, there's a long list of rules that as you go through the season, we talk about, we put them on the agenda for the off season, and we'll do that with this one as well.
And it's been a great season so far. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah, phenomenal. I mean, yes, absolutely.
And like he confirmed to me, they're not planning on changing the rules this season, but like everything they do at the end of the season, and all the major sports do this, they'll sit down and they'll talk about, what went right, what went wrong. Baseball has their meetings when they talk about that. NASCAR does the same thing. So they may discuss this in the off season and see if maybe they want to tighten this up. But, for this season, if somebody decides they want to go race another series and come back, there's a precedent there. They could still get a championship waiver. So we'll see how it works out. My most famous remembrance of a waiver was when Kyle Busch back in 2015 had that horrible accident at the Xfinity Series at Daytona. And I was there for that, and it was just a horrible night. And then when he made his comeback, he came back at Charlotte, and I was there for that, and he went on to win the championship. That was the one of the best stories ever in NASCAR. In my entire 30 years around this sport, was probably one of the greatest sports stories. So we'll see how this works out for Larson. And I'm glad they did. I'm glad I'm glad they did approve it because I think he deserved it. He brought a lot of eyes on NASCAR, both in IndyCar and in NASCAR. And I think that he deserves to still continue with the championship. And plus, they cleared it up today. NASCAR, good on them for their part for making Elton available to us so we could understand why it took so long and what went into their decision. If you go to our YouTube channel, I have the entire press conference up. You can go watch it for yourself and see that. So the one thing that bugged me about this whole thing is there was a couple reporters, and I'm not going to name any names because that's not what I'm here for. There was a couple things that they were talking about that maybe NASCAR was hesitant because Larson, when he started the week, and I know he said this the week before the Indianapolis 500, that he was going to prioritize Charlotte, and suddenly that didn't happen. So I kind of wondered about that, and maybe NASCAR was waiting because of that. And maybe people consider the Indianapolis 500 as bigger. And maybe that was the reason that he stayed there. And at the end, they swapped and made Indy the priority. I don't know. The other thing that people were speculating about was that NASCAR officials were waiting for that and trying to figure that out. And they were speculating that as fact, right? They were saying NASCAR will approve, somebody that's in NASCAR told me, look, here's the thing. We in the media, we here in the interest of the internet now, we don't sell newspapers anymore. It's not about selling magazines. It's about getting clicks. It's about getting social media likes. It's about getting eyes on our websites, and I'm guilty of this. That's what I want. But some people are doing speculation as facts. So they were saying, and in this case, it turned out to be correct, but they were presenting it as facts that NASCAR is going to announce that Larson's got the waiver. Now, whether they actually had the inside information, I don't believe that because I don't think anybody inside NASCAR is going to leak that information. There's too much for them to lose. It's just like conspiracy theories about one driver winning a race and NASCAR scripted it. NASCAR doesn't script anything, you guys. There's just too many people involved. There's too much money. There's too much going on. And there would be too many butthurt feelings if, NASCAR said, you can't win, you have to finish third and you have to finish second, and we're going to let you win. It doesn't happen like that. The same with leaks. I don't think NASCAR does leak things on occasion. I think to test the waters on things like they may say we are considering a track in New York City. That happened a couple years ago, and then we spread that, and they can see the feedback from people, and maybe that's what happened here. But I just think it was speculation. It wasn't the facts. But when people are out there reporting this is the fact, I don't like that. I don't like breaking embargoes. What I mean by that is teams and sponsors will send us press releases and say a good example is when Busch Beer moved to Ross Chastain last year. I knew about that months in advance. Busch had sent me the information and gave me an opportunity to talk to him. I did, and then because of the controversy they had, they held everything off. I held that story for 6 months, but I knew that Busch was going to Ross Chastain. So we have those embargoes, and we don't break those embargoes, or we don't get anything else that's embargoed. So in those cases, we may know and we may have a heads up, and we will respect that. In this case, I don't think NASCAR was floating anything. I think it was just somebody sitting behind the keyboard saying this is the facts, and it was just speculation. It wasn't the facts. Okay. All right. Now, the last thing I want to say about that is, again, the rules will be reexamined. But one interesting tidbit that came out, Joseph Newgarden said that he wants to do the double, but only in reverse. So he wants to run the Indianapolis 500 and then come and run the Charlotte race. And so it would be him and as an IndyCar driver. It would be kind of a reverse in terms of the IndyCar driver coming to race NASCAR. That would be fantastic. I've seen Joseph Newgarden run a lap in an IndyCar, at I think it was the Roval setup. But to have Joseph Newgarden come down and try to run the 600 after running the Indy 500, I mean, he's a 2-time winner now. Why not? That would be freaking amazing. So let's see what happens going forward. He did say he wants Kyle Larson to try the double again, and it is a 2-year deal with McLaren. So I really hope Kyle Larson does it again next year, and it goes a lot smoother. So we'll see. So let me back up. Last week, towards the end of last week, after we did the program last week, I got to talk and spend some time with my friend Carl Edwards, who was elected to NASCAR's Hall of Fame class for this coming year. And I said it last week, I have not been to a NASCAR Hall of Fame induction ceremony, just because of time and budgets and all that. I will be there in January for this one because Carl and I have kind of a history. Many years ago, he asked me to help do some PR work with him and his brother when they were starting a music company. And that kind of bled over to me helping do some NASCAR stuff. And I emceed a couple Office Depot events that he had and a press conference. So I consider the guy a good friend, but he's faded from obscurity. So we talked last week, and I got a chance to spend a little bit of time with him. And this meeting that we had among all the media was unique in that we spent probably the first 10 minutes, all of us, just catching up with Carl and Carl catching up with us. He knew us all by name, called us all out by name. We caught up and that was great. So here's my little excerpt of me talking to Carl Edwards. You know, you haven't aged, man. So this living the non-racing life, dude, the sailing life, looks like it's so good to you. It's so good to see you. We miss you around the sport. And to kind of follow up on what Bob said, no, you're not going to get in a cup car again. That's great. But could we see you back at a track on a kind of a semi-regular basis in some form or fashion?
Yeah, first, it's great to see you, Greg. I had more fun than I thought I would have last year at Darlington up in the booth with Clint and Mike, and it really was enjoyable. That shocked me. I went there thinking, okay, this is a huge honor and it's something I need to go and respect the honor. And I left thinking, man, that's fun. And so I think if I were to come back in a regular capacity, what I enjoyed was being up in the booth. I enjoyed kind of calling the race to whatever degree I did there for 45 minutes or whatever. That part I enjoyed. So maybe something like that. But I don't have anything lined up right now. But definitely much more open to that than I ever have been. Like I said, I had a good time.
Part of that was I know when I was in the military and I'd be away from my kids when they were younger and they were 4, 5, 6, and 10 and those ages, it was tough. I mean, my God, those little babies now of yours are soon going to be teenagers. Is that kind of helping fuel this? Yeah, I want to get back on a semi-regular basis, maybe not in a car, but in some other capacity.
Yeah, I really, you guys everybody's working on something. We talked about this earlier today, just everybody's got a project, something that's driving them forward. And for me, for 20 years of my life, it was racing. That's all I wanted to do. It's all I thought about. And I felt like, all these blessings were just laid at my feet, this path, the guys at the dirt track, Mike Mittler, Jack Roush, Joe Gibbs, all the wonderful people. And then when I woke up one day and I said, hey, like there's some serious other things, my life, the things that are laid in front of me, the things that no one else will do, that's to be the best husband I can be, the best father I can be, to steward, all the things that have been given to me. And so that's what I've been doing the last 7 years. But you're right, Greg, as time goes on, I mean, there's a whole nother world after, hopefully after successfully raising kids, and who knows, but yeah, definitely I have a little more time and attention and bandwidth now.
Thanks, pal. It's really good seeing you. I hope to see you again in the future.
Thanks.
Just rant and rave like you do to the TV during sport.
All right, this week's rants. Now, I've already ranted about speculation versus facts. I'm not going to go back down that road, but I will say this. And Owen's going to bring it up because he recorded his rants before he headed to Peru. Fox always talks about the pyro they put on the first lap of the Gateway race, and it's really cool to see. They only showed it the first year, They didn't show it. They talked about it, and the directors, as Owen mentions in his rants, was terrible. The only highlights were they showed some different pit stop angles, but they were talking about things that were happening in the field that they never showed. They talked about a pit road incident that we never saw, and all that. So that was a little disappointing. But Fox is part of the deal next year. They're not going to be doing as many races. It's going to be streamed next year, and next year is going to be a whole new ball game, so to speak, a whole new area when it comes to TV. And I'm going to talk about that in another show as we get closer, because the what we have now, which is Fox and NBC, and before it was Fox and ESPN, that kind of thing, that's going to change drastically next year. We're going to be streaming a lot of stuff, so that'll be interesting to see. So again, Owen in his rants talks about that, and here's his pre-recorded rant before he headed to Peru.
Now I've got a rant here, and it's about the TV coverage. The big one, we've been here 3 years now, 3 years at Gateway, and Fox is still missing the pyrotechnics on the pace laps. Right before the cars come to green, there's a lot of explosions on the backstretch. A good shot, always the headline image for Gateway. Sure, it's not part of the race per se, but like I say, every article from Gateway leads with this picture. We do it on Cup Scene, and it's become an iconic shot. Unless you're a TV viewer, when you really don't see it. I can excuse it in the first race that Fox is covering. I mean, I'm sure it's in the TV meeting, but you don't know what you're getting necessarily. But now it's been 3 years. Surely Fox can cover it on the pace laps. I just feel like it's a big thing, a Gateway. It's sort of its hallmark to miss. And I also felt like the TV direction overall wasn't great. There were 2 calls the booth was describing, once when a car was stopped on track and an incident on pit road with a crew member, where the TV broadcast didn't cut to it at all, only showed it quite a few laps later that we only got to see those incidents, leaving the booth to describe something while there's just another battle being shown on screen. But I have to give some kudos to Fox, though, for a little bit of balance after all the negativity there. I really liked their pit road coverage during one of the stage breaks with reporters on top of the pit box. It allowed for a much more detailed description of the pit stop itself. For instance, seeing Alan Gustafson rolling tires for Chase Elliott's pit stop. And I really love the interviews with the crew chiefs afterwards. Fox has done a really great job of highlighting pit road this year. I thought that continued, and I'd really like to see that feature in some races going on this season. I love seeing pit road highlighted and seeing the intricacies. I saw some complaints that, yes, we didn't get to see as many pit stops, didn't get to see every contender and see how well they did on pit road, but I think you can see how every car comes out, and I think it's really valuable to get some of that inside pit road information, especially in an early pit stop, maybe not a stage 2 break, but early in the race, seeing how the pit stops really work.
So for obvious reasons, Owen is not going to be writing his weekly preview for cupscene.com. However, before he ventured off, maybe on the back of a llama up into the Andes, he did record his thoughts on this week's race at Sonoma.
We are at Sonoma next week, so the second road course of the season. It's been repaved, so we'll have to see if it races any differently. I don't expect too much difference. It's always been a sort of strung out race for the Cup cars with the next gen. We'll see if that changes at all, but it's a new surface. Bear that in mind. As for my pick, looking back at the first road course race of the season, at Circuit of the Americas, it was William Byron and Christopher Bell who were battling at the end. So those cars we know are clearly strong at the road courses. And obviously Hendrick, we know, is always going to be strong at these kind of races. But I'm going to go with Bell for my pick this week. He won at Charlotte in the rain-shortened race, just barely missed out on Gateway with that, with the fastest car, but those engine problems I mentioned. I think he's hungry for a full-length real win to back it up. He's in the playoffs, but he really wants that to back up that win. And we know he's had the speed, both at the ovals and at the road courses. So Bell is my pick this week. We'll see what we see at Sonoma.
I'm going to pick a Hendrick car. And because Hendrick's been strong there, I would like to see Kyle Larson. I've got Carl Edwards on the brain. I would like to see Kyle Larson win it. Kind of thumb his nose at NASCAR and why did you make me wait so long for the waiver? So we'll see. So I'll be back next week. We will have post Sonoma, and I wish I was out there. By the way, Fox, I don't have it sitting around here. Fox sent us a bottle of wine, which kind of makes me jealous because I love wine. I'm a wino. And I have some Richard Childress wine from the Childress Vineyards that I got at the Childress Winery when I was up there a couple weeks ago. Now I got some Fox wine. So I'm going to be drinking that this weekend and wishing I were in Sonoma, but we'll see. And Owen will still be in Peru. I don't know how long he's going to be there. Maybe he won't come back. Maybe he'll become a monk and sit on the Andes and we'll never see him again. I don't know. But we'll be back next week. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. Like and subscribe. Visit cupscene.com. Buy some merch. I got some great merch. And if you buy it, you support this site. Get me out to more races. I got swag to give out when I do get to races. And we hope to see you soon. Thanks again, everybody. Peace out. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for listening to Speed Talk Live. For questions or just to tell us how bad our production is or to leave other feedback, leave us a comment below. For all the latest NASCAR news, visit www.cupscene.com. Until next time, peace out and let's go racing.
All right, there's the checkered flag. Great job, driver.